you would feel much better about paying into a system where you have more say in seeing the things that you want to see be achieved, be worked toward,
And the key is that it not be compulsory, because if it's not working, you have to be able to vote with your wallet, because otherwise what's to stop people from continuing doing something that isn't working? So if you can back out of it and be like, whoa, hey, hold on a minute, and you get all your friends together, and you don't necessarily have to back out. You could simply say, look, there's 100,000 of us that are completely unhappy with this service. We're just going to stop paying into it. And then that would encourage whoever's getting paid to change their mind. Maybe they'll alter the way they're doing things and improve stuff.
But some kind of
still be funded.
But some kind of AI interface could help balance between societal need and your will, and say okay, I see you value these things, but we should apply your money in this way because there are things that we definitely need to divert some money to, but for the remainder of it, you can definitely funnel your money over here instead of to whatever you don't value so much. Half of the tax money goes to things it has to, and then the other half goes to things that you want it to, so that there's never really any deficit in the things that really matter, even if you don't think they do. Things that are objectively necessary, like energy and water and sewage and roads and
and one thing that
a system like that could actually help create an a la carte system that appeases people a little bit more. We've talked about this before, apropos AI and governments competing. The idea of AI being the government could actually be kind of a beta test as how a competing government operation would go. Allow an open source AI government to operate on the side and just see what happens.
And I agree. And that would be difficult to implement, not as just simply implementing it, but it'd be difficult to get some kind of leniency or authorization to implement it, because the government doesn't like competition. Those politicians and all the...
But you have to just write yourself, or have AI write itself a constitution and just declare itself the government.
Well, you could.
What are they going to do? Go to war with AI? That's actually a really good idea. What would they do? Who would they go drop a bomb on? The server? Which server?
I know.
Open source, right?
I think it's something that does need to be tried on some relatively decent scale. Say maybe a city of reasonable size. Something I'd say like Tacoma or Olympia or something around here. I'm just thinking of not Seattle. Fuck that. They can sink into the ocean for all I care.
Could there be concurrent government competing with one another within one jurisdiction?
Yeah.
It's kind of playing with fire to try a whole system like competing governments, which, you could argue that was like the Civil War, right? But
sort of.
It kind of wasn't, because it was more like two separate countries vying for control of the whole thing. So
yeah, exactly.
This would be a little bit more like I don't want to say complementary, but it would be competitive, but it would also be like a common goal. Everybody wants the best for everybody, and it just kind of be like a big playing field where you could choose which kind of government assistance, if any, that you would want.
And here's the thing, the biggest problem with corporations isn't the stock market, it's the shareholders. The shareholders demanding ever increasing profits, and everybody that's in the company are beholden to that. Like the CEO has to ensure that the company is making more and more profit for the shareholders, and that's
the government reinforces that.
Well, exactly. And in fact, I think it might be law, in fact. And so what ends up happening is companies are no longer a personal thing where they're regular people, and they actually care, and maybe they just want the business to be a good business. But no, now it's like, we have to follow these people who hold everything.
Right. I want to talk about a Ponzi scheme. The whole idea that profit is like an assured thing.
That makes no sense.
How Just do the fucking math. How does that work?
Well, you can't, and the thing is, you can't predict the future. The shareholders can demand profit all they want, but if some unforeseen change happens in the market or whatever in the environment that the markets operate in, well, you might be in the red, and then what? They fire the CEO and get another one in. But see, that's the problem. That's what you end up with, you end up with shitty products and services, cost-cutting measures, like things that don't really improve.
Shrinkflation.
Yeah, because the motivation is to make a profit because they have to. Yeah. And I know a lot of CEOs and executives and companies and people under them do their best to try to keep the product as good as possible. There is a threshold where we gotta lay some people off. We gotta change the product to be smaller or something, raise the price, whatever they gotta do. And that just sucks. I don't see that as a benefit to society. That's a detriment.
This is something I was thinking about recently. There's a bit of a double-edged sword when it comes to equitable treatment and bureaucracy. You can't really have equitable treatment without bureaucracy. You can't really assure that everyone is going to consider the needs of others without having regulation. However, you can't really have equity because of bureaucracy, because you can't have nuance for human intuition or situational exceptions and stuff. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, I have to do things by the book. I can't help you because you're going through cancer or whatever.
No, you're right.
It's that double-edged sword. It's like equity can't exist with or without bureaucracy.
Pretty much. Some of those things, it's very idealistic to think that it can be achieved 100%. That's not possible. And we have to, that's kind of what I always believe. There's gonna be some people that fall through the cracks or have something stupid happen, a mistake is made or whatever.
It is all about hardlining 50%.
Yeah. Well, and there's also in society, there's conflicting wants, desires, and needs that are kind of at odds with each other in some ways. And that's the really hard thing. How would you balance somebody who wants all kinds of safety nets and I want to make sure that everything's covered versus somebody who is just fiercely independent and they're like, I don't want anybody. I just want to take my own risks and solve my own problems, and I don't want anybody breathing down my neck, telling me what to do. It's kind of hard to figure that one out. And that's where I think kind of what you're talking about with this a la carte system or competing governance, it's like you could theoretically have a society where both those sorts of sides are covered.
The whole idea that the Hadron Collider sent us into an alternate universe is actually kind of pretty plausible.
Yeah, that would explain a lot. Or maybe that we're living in a simulation, right?
Yeah, something's not right.
Like the programmers are like, things are looking all right. Let's see if we change this variable a little, and that, and we'll just throw some monkey wrenches in there.
In the beginning, there was a God, and then God got bored and just took an extended vacation, never came back. And then somebody was like, "Oh, we need something to control the universe." They created a simulation, and then they buggered off.
Yeah.
And now we're just stuck in a simulation within a godless universe.
Like you said. So maybe a group of people, really wise individuals, built this simulation, and they're like, this is gonna be the greatest thing to last millions and millions of years, and then they all die. They get some disease and they all die, so nobody's maintaining it. So the machine the simulation's running on, it's sparking and shit's just breaking down left and right, and that would explain all this weirdness. Banks
God's got his feet up on the couch, smoking a joint. Man, I don't give a shit what happened. I didn't make the simulation.
There's rodents chewing on cabling and stuff like that. There's nobody keeping it running. I remember when the push for marijuana legalization happened in Washington State, and all the PSAs that came out and all the panic, trying to spread panic basically, and fear mongering, saying oh my God, if it's legal, they're gonna be, there's gonna be thugs smoking pot in front of your kids. They're gonna be smoking pot everywhere. And yeah, well, that did kind of happen for a couple of months right after that passed. It was a little bit of a party time where people are just smoking pot wildly. It went crazy, but now you rarely see it.
I admit, I was one of those people that expected that to happen, and I did see it for a few years, maybe more than a few months, but for a few years I would see it quite often, and then it sort of dried up.
Yeah. Yeah. And but I mean, the big celebration, that was the first few months where everybody's fucking smoking pot everywhere. It was just a huge party.
Yeah.
And then it kind of tapered off a little bit, and then maybe somebody walking down the sidewalk or sitting their car in a parking lot or something like that. Now you rarely see it at all. Yet every pot shop in the area is doing quite well, so people are still buying pot.
I had a part-time cooking job.
Yeah.
I got approved for a $100,000 loan that would have got me at least a condominium.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
For a part-time cooking job 25 years ago.
Actually, if you had 100K though, there were properties in the east side where you could buy a whole house. Imagine if you'd done that. I mean, I thought about doing that
At the time, I probably thought that was a shitty idea, but then there's been a lot of work to gentrify the east side of Tacoma. So it actually probably would have been a really good economical choice.
Well, and it's kind of auto gentrifying because the prices are so fucking high now that only people of means can afford to buy. Like the lowest lowest price houses around here are like $300,000 for a 1-bedroom house. Like that's a starter house? How the hell? There's no way anybody can afford that.
And the other crazy thing about that is that 1, even 2-bedroom houses are super rare, because when they were all built, 3-bedroom houses were like dirt cheap.
Yeah.
And so like most of them are 3-bedroom houses, which are now like $750,000 in the ghetto.
Well, and there's an incentive too that's artificial, like zoning, for instance, only single family properties in certain areas. So when a house gets torn down and rebuilt, builders have an incentive to like maximize their return, because they're like, man, the permits and all the licenses and all the shit and the cost of all the labor and the materials and inspections and everything, it's so much, I might as well build it as big as possible. And so they do. And then more and more people coming from the outside with these IT jobs in Seattle and stuff, they buy them up, or companies buy them up. That's a stupid thing too. It's like, I don't like the idea of companies owning a whole bunch of houses and rental properties and stuff.
The government really doesn't have any incentive to do good for its constituents, because they have all this corruption that gives them all the goodies.
The tax revenue still rolls in.
Right. That is a little frustrating that there's no way for us to be like, you know what, fuck you.
In the US and many other places, it's like a representative system. So you vote for particular representatives who theoretically are supposed to represent their constituents, but oftentimes they behave completely on their own, usually involving supporting government interests or corporate interests, like big corporate interests and things, which they're kind of intertwined in many ways. And there's been studies on that too that show that politicians, legislators hardly ever do anything that their constituents want. Mostly they do other stuff. And so what do you do about that? Vote in another narcissist or sociopath that'll do basically the same thing? No, that's the frustrating thing for me. I'm compelled to pay taxes. You can't not do it and last very long, essentially. Either you're going to get imprisoned or have all your shit taken away, but yet I don't really actually have any say in all this legislative in these processes. Even within my own state, in Washington, there's the largest volume of the state is one school of thought about governance. And then the smaller metropolitan areas have a different school of thought, but there's more people packed into those spaces. So they overrule 100% of the time, majority of the volume of the state. Like Eastern Washington versus Western Washington. They're completely different cultures, basically, with totally different needs. I can wish all I want. I can vote all I want. It's not going to change a thing. I'm always outnumbered. and it's very frustrating.
The playgrounds we grew up with were way more fun.
Yes.
Because there was the element of danger, yes, but if you were evolved enough to not be a complete idiot, it was just fun rather than dangerous. If you open the world up to take a risk here and there. You might find better ways of doing things.
Absolutely. I think you get a better, well-rounded upbringing too, where you kind of are prepared. Like these playground experiences prepare you for the real world where there are actual risks, and there is nothing to fall back on. Because I remember many times growing up, when I was little, say elementary school, several times kids fell off the monkey bars and broke an arm, and they're screaming and stuff, and everybody's standing around like wide-eyed looking at that. Damn. Now everybody in that class is vigilant, looking and double-checking each other. Yeah, occasionally some bad thing happens, but ultimately it benefits everybody because it becomes a lasting remembrance of what happens when you get stupid.
Yeah. And plus, you don't even necessarily have to witness that thing. You can just hear about it.
You hear about it. Everybody talks. And of course, they embellish to make it even. But man, did you hear about Johnny? He fell off the monkey bars and broke not only his arm, but like his neck. And his skull cracked open and his brain was leaking out. And you know how it goes. And you're like, damn. But then also as a secondary benefit of that too is that engineering improves. So engineers are building all these playground equipment and stuff, and maybe they think, oh yeah, I guess this is safe. We tested it and it seems all right. But of course, kids, they'll find a way to be stupid.